like to call to order this meeting of the Monroe County Community Justice Reform Committee. It is Monday, January 9th, 2023. And the first order of business or second order of business is calling of the roll. If you would please do that, Courtney.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Thomas, Counselor Iverson, Counselor Crossley,
Here.
Counselor Wiltz,
Here.
Judge Fawcett,
Here.
Judge Stafford,
Here.
Judge Dekoff, Judge Crothy,
Present.
Sheriff Marte,
Present.
Commander Gibbons. From the prosecutor's office, Erica Oliphant, I'm sorry.
I am appearing as the proxy for the prosecutor's office, April Wilson.
April Wilson,
That's our.
Michael Hunt,
Here.
Karen Renbeck,
Here.
Lori Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. And the statement of our guiding principles, I believe we have that all settled. And Courtney, from now on, that could be printed possibly on the back of our agenda so that people will be reminded of that regularly. A rather important point of business for tonight is that we cannot really have hybrid meetings without passing this ordinance that allows it, which you have a copy of it right in front of you. It does include certain conditions. You cannot miss more than 2 meetings in a row, or at least you can't attend them virtually more than 2 in a row. We don't have a budget, so we don't need to worry about that. And I think that's most of what it is.
It's the standard it's the standard ordinance. for
Yeah,
all.
this is just the standard ordinance that all committees that are having hybrid meetings are signing these. So I'm the one who signs it, but we do need to have a vote on it. If I could have a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the electronic attendance policy for public meetings, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. And our next order of business is a survey update from the judges, bailiffs, and I think that's all. And Judge Stafford, I believe you're taking this on.
The 3 of us who are here
And-
as judges will be taking it on. I believe Judge Fawcett is going to start us off tonight.
Okay, well, I just would like to point out, I took a look at what you sent out in advance, and I think we can skip the section on Fullerton Pike.
We had already
Okay.
come to that conclusion.
Great, thank you.
So as Judge Stafford said, I'm Judge Fawcett. Judge Crothy is also going to help present. I want to thank Judge Stafford for collating all of the data. We sent it out to the entire judicial system, all of the judges, all of the court reporters, everybody in court services, the bailiffs, and everyone within the probation department. Once we got all of the responses back, they were not edited in any way, shape, or form. We didn't correct for typos. Clearly, we didn't change any of the content. And I believe as Judge Stafford received all of them, she put them in the PowerPoint as they were received. So our thought was obviously the PowerPoint has been given to everybody. So we're not going to read it word for word. We're going to kind of summarize each slide as we feel it just necessary to highlight all the responses that we received.
Thank you. Ms. Moser, could you go ahead and share the PowerPoint?
Yes.
And
Yes.
And I'm going to go ahead and unmask for that. And let me also welcome and thank other members of the Board of Judges for being here. We have Judge Holly Harvey, if you could. Hello, thank you for being here. We have Commissioner Brett Raper here. Thank you for being here, sir. I appreciate it. We also send the regrets of Judge Deacock, who has family in town, is unable to be here. Judge Houghton is unable to be here as she is still undergoing jury selection for a felony trial. She's still in the courtroom today. And Judge Saltzman has a family matter that is keeping her from being here. And Judge Hazeman should be here in a little bit as soon as she finishes initial hearings. And Judge Bradley is, he has a family thing tonight, so he cannot be here. But all of the Board of Judges have reviewed our presentation and the underlying data, and we've discussed it. In fact, I just finished a quick meeting with Judge Deacock about it. As we move into the details of the survey, I want to emphasize our thanks for being included in this committee. I think it's essential if we are going to be able to come up with the best result, that we all work together and put our cards on the table. And so that's what we're here to do and have been since the beginning. We respect all the different branches of government. As the judicial branch, we have a lot of respect for the executive branch and for the legislative branch and for the role that each of us play in working together to make this happen. The judicial branch has to follow, as I'm sure you know, the due process requirements, not only of the Indiana Constitution, but also of the US Constitution. We have to obey the rules that are put down by the Indiana Supreme Court and the statutes put out by the Indiana General Assembly, as well as the precedent set by the Indiana Supreme Court and Court of Appeals. As part of that, of course, I just want to touch base. We understand and fully respect that the commissioners make the decision about location and number of beds, as I know that they respect that we have to follow those laws and do what we need to do as the judicial branch. No one branch can reform another. All right, so let me move then into Judge Crothy as she talks about desired features for a new jail.
Okay, and this is just a little, I can't read the bottom parts, but it's looks like the higher bars on there are substance use, medical treatment, and mental health, which were, I think maybe from my looking at that was the three highest responses on that. And that is absolutely, right? The blue is absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Blue is absolutely, sorry, can't see. The recommended total bed capacity, 65 out of 82 people responded to this. 23 didn't respond. I don't know if I can't assume, but maybe that's because they didn't really know. Not everyone's familiar with how many beds we might need. But the average was 393 beds and the median was 350 beds. Then we asked a question about can we get the next slide?
There you go. One more.
Yep.
There you go. Nope.
Yep. Padded cell capacity, 61 out of 82. The median number, well, the average mean was 29.4 padded cells, which is substantially more than we have now. And the median was 10 padded cells.
All right, we wanted to highlight, if you can go to the next screen. You'll see that 53 out of 82 folks provided comments on what works well in the current jail. And we were going to go through some of those comments and we'll do them relatively quickly. Of course, understanding that these are comments directly made by one of the respondents. These are not comments necessarily from the judges themselves, and they're not endorsed by the judges themselves. These are just comments made from people who work in the judicial branch. One person says, I don't know. One says communication is good. Nothing, not sure. Close to the courtrooms, not sure. Mostly escape proof, convenient location, ease of transporting inmates to and from court. Close proximity to the court and other court affiliated offices. Central downtown location for services for inmates when they are released. Nothing. That it's close to the courts, more staff, current flow, being able to call and have someone brought down ASAP. Easy access to the courts, able to transport for hearings quickly, easy to get paperwork to them. All county offices involved are in proximity to the jail. Officers are doing the best they can with what they have, the staff and hard workers like they have right now.
I'm going on to the next slide. Some of those comments are repetitive. Obviously, I don't think it's necessary that I read each one, but the sum being the ability to have the jail, courts, probation, public defenders, prosecutors, community corrections, and the local sheriff department all together. The ability to service the public, the justice system, and the safety of all included flows well. They commented that the pretrial release cooperation and proximity to the court and probation for assessments. And for those of you who might not be familiar with that, Monroe County participates in the pretrial release program, and each time somebody is arrested, that either the morning of the arrest or that next day, they work with somebody from the probation department, they completed an assessment. So the pretrial release program can make recommendations to the court about the recommendation regarding release. So having them close by, I think, helps facilitate that. They commented that the staff works very hard and that they were happy. Someone commented that they allowed Centerstone to provide treatment programs in the jail, then have an outside jail component, so some wraparound services. One person commented unsure, someone else said nothing.
Okay, and just a reminder, we're still on comments on what works well. I'm not gonna read all of them, but because some of them are duplicates, but one said, I think the staff does a great job with what they have to work with. The current setup is not very functional. Another said proximity to the courts, public defenders, and probation officers. There was also mention of the jail trustee program, inmate transport, meal prep and distribution, specialty dorms units. Inmates can be transported to the courtrooms fairly easily, and there have been no escapes.
Go ahead, next slide, if you would. We also asked the question, what concerns do you have about the jail? And 66 out of the 82 people provided comments there. Lack of outdoor space, especially for long-term stays, lack of vocational rehabilitative education and services, poor nutritional services for long-term stays, age of the facility and danger to staff, lawsuit waiting to happen. I think the lawsuit already happened, but yes. Overcrowded, location to court services, dirty court offices, the fact that it leaks into the court offices, noise in the court offices, low staffing, available beds, mental health and substance treatment availability, very dated and future costs, overcrowded, not enough staff, outdated, causing maintenance issues, plumbing concerns, unsafe, lack of community programming, no outdoor time, no exit planning for inmates when they're released, lack of job training, mental health services, visits with families, and civil legal services. Employees leaving and not properly trained and treated poorly, too much outside distance brought in.
Going on to the next slide that summarizes or encapsulates the responses about the concerns for the jail. Again, overcrowding and understaffed, short staff, not enough correctional officers. It's run down and just not functioning. The jail is poorly designed. It's in constant need of repairs. The ventilation is horrible. The lack of room is a great concern. The inmates in the jail are above the courts and offices, not enough room for the inmates we currently have, not enough mental health care, and other counties send their released inmates here for care and they end up in our facility. The building isn't made to house the type of inmates we have or sustain the care they require. Facilities are insufficient to handle the number of people. Nothing if we would only house medium and high level inmates and have state-run mental health facilities, not the county.
People commented on the next slide that the jail itself is too small, no sufficient room for programming, safety concerns for the inmates themselves. The jail offices could be situated more efficiently for jail workflow. The justice building itself is in constant need of repair. The ventilation is horrific. The entire building, mainly due to the jail being placed on top of the office space, has created a sick environment not only for inmates, but for staff due to constant leaks, ventilation, and mold issues. Building employees have continuous allergy and sinus problems, my apologies. Not being able to maintain staff, the conditions of the jail justice building as a whole, inability to provide treatment to inmates easily, structure organization is inefficient, no work release, intake, drunk tank is dirty and insufficient, little to no programming, limited mental health services, limited access to physical health services, bigger means we can detain more, proximity to public defenders, courts, probation, not enough cells, polycom system is inadequate and understaffed.
On the next slide, they have concerns about drug use inside the jail, staffing and transport issues, even when already located together, overcrowding in an old infrastructure. There's no privacy for probation and community corrections to conduct business. For example, pretrial has to conduct assessments in the hallway when not using video conferencing. There's minimal programming space. Too many mental health inmates not getting what they need, not big enough, not able to provide enough services. We need a work release program. We want more emphasis on programming and there isn't enough space. needs more space, up-to-date and safe facilities, treatment opportunities for both substance use and mental health disorders, and partnerships with outside service provider, outside service providing agencies. And then one person commented that they were unsure.
Okay. And these, next slide, please. These are still concerns about the jail. Outdated equipment, business practices and facility, overcrowding, lack of staffing, falling apart, minimal in-house services, limited recreation and programming, disrepair. There should be separate dorms for treatment needs like substance use and mental health, and dedicated staff to work these dorms. Treatment should be available in the treatment dorms. There should be high, moderate, and low risk general population blocks as well. It is very old and in need of constant repair. The jail being above the courtrooms and offices isn't a good layout. There also doesn't appear to be enough room for inmate pods or other functions that need to happen there. The location, crowdedness, and lack of a recreation area, understaffed and not enough beds.
Next slide. Overcrowding, no recreation, no windows, no yard, sanitation, inadequate bed space, inadequate medical facilities and inmate observation, especially regarding mental health concerns, outdated plumbing, again, overcrowding, no room for programming or office space for pretrial or probation staff to conduct assessments or meetings, none besides perhaps the age of the building, overcrowding, understaffed. I've heard the full holding tank is filthy, extremely dirty, unsanitary, out of date, condition is terrible, see report that the county paid, overcrowding, communication with attorneys, staffing.
And then the last slide that addresses the concerns. One respondent said, I'm not familiar with the current jail, so I can't answer that. No space for appropriate programs, treatment, visitation, and care for those who are in it. Lack of services, too small and not adequately set up for any outside time. It does not meet constitutional standards. Its location over officers allow inmates to flood offices. There is no room for training, programming to allow inmates to work on improving their lives while they're in jail, with the exception of the Serve Safe program, limited, if any, recreational space opportunities for inmates. And lastly, the current jail does not meet the needs of the community for effective safety and programming.
Don't forget the next slide. On these are features to consider. 52 of 82 people responded. We're not going to read all of them just for time, and you all can get a copy if you'd like of the presentation, and we'll read them. But I was going to just hit some of the highlights. One person said dedicated room for video conferencing with court when needed, a library, a quiet area for inmate computers, iPad for Zoom calls with court. Lots of community involvement, training, job training, mental health, family visits, outdoor time, safety for jail staff and inmates, distance from courts so that any noise from inmates does not disturb other staff or court and courtrooms in the same building as the jail. Work release job programming, areas for video conferencing with mental health evaluators, the courts, tunnels for safe transport around a judicial complex as a whole to keep all departments flowing cohesively and to ensure inmates are receiving the proper services with probation, community corrections, and able to make it to their appointments swiftly after release from jail. And then there's also a concern of transportation once released, mental health unit, mental health pods, as well as substance abuse pods, a decent size recreation area, good size booking and Sallyport area. Probation and the community corrections co-located with the jail for ease to the clients, space for private one-on-one meetings, space for group programming, mental health services, reentry services such as education and employment services. Someone suggested perhaps a veterans block where Veteran Affairs Administration can get veterans plugged into services. Connecting veterans with other veterans in jail may prove beneficial upon their release. Order and cleanliness will likely be kept in a veterans block. An inside-outside recreation area, space for pretrial probation to meet with clients to conduct assessments and pre-sentence reports. And then just a couple more, library, exercise area, well, that was already said, but in addition to adequate space for programs, treatment, and visitation, it is very important to have safe and adequate space for professional visitation.
The next slide then talks about whether or not people felt there was a need for co-location.
There we go.
Yeah, all right. So, again, there were 82 possible responses, 79.6, I think ultimately responded. So with the jail, most 60 people, if I'm reading that correctly, felt that the courts needed to be co-located with the jail. Some felt it didn't have to be, and some had no opinion. Going to probation, again, looks like about 50 or so, maybe a little bit higher, felt probation need to be collated with the jail. About 20 didn't feel that they needed to be with the jail, and some had no opinion. Public defenders, it was felt for the most part, about probably again 55, 56-ish, that the public defenders needed to be located with the jail. Some felt does not have to be, and obviously the others had no opinions. Prosecutors, it was maybe 42-ish, felt they needed to be co-located. Clerk of the court, not as much, maybe about 30 people thought the clerk needed to be co-located. Community corrections felt about the same as the public defenders, and then the sheriff having the highest need to be co-located with the jail.
Is it okay if I jump in real fast? I just wanted to point out that this question was not about co-located with each other, but only about with the jail. For example, the courts really have to be co-located with the clerk of court. So even though you see the clerk of court has the lowest response here as having to be with the jail, it really needs to be with the courts, which also need to be with the jail. So it's, we're all in a train. We're all stuck together. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's the,
Okay. So we didn't put all of the co-location comments. We're not going to read them all. I certainly hope that you do. We wanted to talk briefly, and if you could skip ahead to the slide that says features to include in a new campus. It's about 4 or 5 away. We talked about some features if we were going to have not just a new jail, but also a new justice complex. So new offices and courts. People talked about openable windows. We had an average of 80.5 responses out of 82 possible. A little less than a third said openable windows are important. More than that said space for witnesses to wait privately. As you can imagine, sometimes witnesses are there as the victims in a criminal case, or they're there for an order of protection hearing or a child abuse case. Sometimes it's best to keep those witnesses apart from each other and away from the general public. Secure hallways are really critical. That was the overwhelming majority answer there that we really have to have. And if you've ever been in the back halls of the Justice Building, you know that there's a public hallway that you can get to the courtrooms from. There's a jury hallway that will lead from the courtrooms to the jury rooms. And then there's a secure hallway for judges and court staff. And so it's kind of a 3-layer system. We need to have sufficient offices for staff that cannot be seen into from the outside. Speaking as someone who for the last 4 years had an office that was really easy to shoot into from the parking garage, it was very scary on a daily basis to be there and to be that exposed. And I put up curtains and plants in the way so that you couldn't see where I was in the office. I've gotten, I think, 3 death threats since becoming a judge. This is something I take very seriously. We need food and dining options. We need a bus stop with a covered waiting area, space for attorneys to wait and make copies. Zoom booths, I think, is probably a little less critical now in light of the Indiana Supreme Court order, but it was there. We're going to skip over the thoughts on the Fullerton Pike proposed location and not talk in detail about features for new courtrooms, although we will come back to that as we get closer to designing if we get there. But we felt like that wasn't as needed for today, and we wanted to stay focused. So at this point, what I would like to do is to thank the Board of Judges for working so hard on this. Probation, bailiffs, court reporters, court services, all staff really pulled together and had a great response rate. I know that Chief Probation Officer Linda Brady worked very hard making sure her staff responded in detail, and those comments were really appreciated. And to ask Judge Harvey and Commissioner Raper if you have any other thoughts that we missed. Ms. Brady, any thoughts? All right. Did Judge Hazeman make it yet? No. All right. So she must still be in court. We are happy to entertain questions.
Well, thank you so much. That was very, very informative and very helpful. And it's really great that you got such a high level of participation in it, which makes the information even more valuable. Are there any questions from the committee?
I had a question. I don't know if you would be able to answer. But I was curious because I jotted down a note where somebody said too much outside distance brought in. Would you all have any idea what that means?
I did not. I
Okay.
had the same question.
Okay,
And I just didn't know.
okay,
Some of it we could figure out what they meant, but I had no idea. I apologize.
okay, no worries.
Listen.
I don't know.
Any other questions? Well, this will be on our website. And if you could please get the raw data to the
I already-
commissioners. Okay,
I believe I sent
Great.
that out to the whole committee last Friday,
and that was the raw data.
both the raw data and the
Okay,
presentation.
great. Thank you very much. And if there is nothing further on this topic, Sheriff Marte, I believe that that surveys are still being worked on for law enforcement and people involved in the jail, which didn't quite get finished in the interim between you and the previous sheriff.
So this is our second week and I have
Yes.
the first time hearing of this. So bear with me with that, on that particular survey. We'll look into it when we get back to the office.
Okay,
But I'm not aware of that. I don't think my staff
No.
is aware of that either.
I don't think you would have been.
Yeah, so.
So that's totally understandable.
yes.
We actually did send out some possible questions for the survey and we can send those to you again. But you should also feel free to add any questions that you think would be important with your more detailed knowledge of what the situation is. So wonderful. Thank you very much.
Just a quick question, because that's a little alarming to hear. So in the transition, nobody mentioned it. Okay.
Pardon? Oh, thank you. Julie, did you, or Commissioner Thomas, did you have something to add?
Yeah, thank you. I also do want to thank the Board of Judges for their report. Thank you for that survey. It's really helpful. I look forward to looking at it more closely. I have not had an opportunity to do so yet. The other thing that I think Sheriff Marte, I think needs to talk to Angie Purdy about that survey, but also we had tasked the jail commander with doing a survey of jail staff and also the medical providers who are working in the jail. And so that also needs to be done. And I don't know if it's been done yet. So Ms. Purdy would be the one to reach out to about that. Thank you.
We'll get all the information to you. I understand that you are juggling a whole lot right at this moment.
That is a true statement. I just checked with my jail commander and we're not aware of that either.
Yeah.
So the only survey that we're aware of is the one that you and I spoke about, and that's it. And that has nothing to do with this right now.
Yes, no, well, ultimately it
degree.
has something to do with
To a
this,
degree.
but not what you're
Exactly.
being asked to do right now.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, yes.
I had one omitted comment, which was to thank Counselor Iverson for coming in and sitting in on court last Thursday. I very much appreciated having him there. And to remind everyone that almost all court hearings are public. Everyone is welcome. Members of the public, members of this committee. We welcome the public coming into court. The only time you can't is if it's an adoption hearing or a confidential hearing of some nature, like a Chins case or a juvenile case, and there will be magnets on the door that say it's a closed hearing, but 95% of hearings, as a rough guess, are public and you are welcome.
Thank you. And I do hope that people will take advantage of that. Ms. Wilson,
Thank you. And I would just add once again that the prosecutor's office is also welcome for anyone on the committee. If you'd like to spend a day or part of a day with us, and I'm sure, or even just talk to public defender's office, I'm just to see some of the challenges that people have in going from court to court and some of the delays that we're struggling with that we could use some support with.
Thank
Happy to
you.
have you.
yes, that would be very useful. And are there any other comments? Seeing none, we will now move on to jail design and construction. And as for the land update, I think it's generally known that the city council did turn down the request for rezoning for the land on Fullerton Pike. So that is no longer in consideration at this time. Because when we first considered using that property, we had searched very carefully within the city limits for property that would be available, that would be suitable. And that was really the only property that we were able to find. So at this point, we are moving our search out into the county, and there's really not a whole lot to be said to that until we've actually found a place and are ready to discuss it.
Yes, Commissioner Jones, just two follow-up questions. I know previously I had mentioned the property behind Catalent, which is, I think, greater than 80 acres. I know not all that's buildable. I think it's more buildable than what you were looking at in Fullerton Pike. Previously, you had shared that an ordinance was entered saying that Catalent you weren't going to build on it for 2 years. But there's also been recent layoffs at Catalent, which would probably impact whether or not they're going to expand. I was wondering, one, if you're reconsidering that Catalent land, especially since it's much closer to downtown and important services for individuals who might be the most vulnerable. And two, I was wondering, as a committee, if the commissioners are unwilling to consider that parcel, if maybe we could discuss as a committee making a recommendation to the commissioners on ideas of land that would kind of fit some of the needs that are coming out in the surveys for both the judges and the local bar. So I was wondering if we could talk about those two options.
Thank you. Yeah, we're actually interested in any locations that might seem suitable. Of course, as we've said before, this is the commissioner's decision, and in the end, we are the ones who are responsible for this decision. But obviously, there are a lot of other people who will be affected by the decision we make, so we will want to hear from others. And as for, no, we are not considering the Thompson property. There are a number of issues with that property that we have identified in the past. There is the agreement to not do anything with it for 2 years. Then it's become a very residential area. Also, access to it is very difficult. We have not been able to determine a good method of accessing it for the kinds of needs that a jail would have. And there was one other point that is escaping me right now. But we have a number of reasons well, actually, we have other plans for that property. Also, in the modern world now, jails are mostly discovering that they really cannot locate downtown. They may have originally located in a situation like that, but there are multiple reasons why that's no longer possible. And there are also multiple solutions for the problems that come up with it not being located downtown. And we have been spending some time looking into those solutions and thinking about just how this problem would be handled. Of course, this was a problem that was brought up with the Fullerton Pike location, and that problem doesn't change just because we didn't get the Fullerton Pike location. So, but no, Thompson is not being considered. So that's.
Judge Stafford.
I apologize. And I speak now not as a representative of the Board of Judges, but only for my own self as a member of the community of longstanding and a member of the committee. I wonder if we could reconsider Councilor Crossley's recommendation made several meetings ago to collaborate with the city and to cooperate with them on land that they may own or have other options for, including, for example, land that was recently used for Bloomington Hospital or for the warehouses for Bloomington Hospital. Walking down the Beeline, there's an entire multi-block area that is almost now vacant that is right next to Centerstone. Talk about an ideal location for a jail. I recognize that that decision is up to the commissioners. I fully respect that. But as a member of this committee, we're here to provide input, and I am providing that input. I'll leave it there to be discussed.
Well, thank you very much. I will point out that I believe the city has some rather extensive plans for that area and for the hospital.
All I'm
Another
suggesting is that we
prob-
talk to them.
Another problem that we have with that is that the city does not have any location that is zoned for a jail. It's a conditional use anywhere in the city. And which means that there would be multiple processes to go through to attempt to use any site in the city. And we believe this is something that really needs to be acted on quickly. And we believe that we can do it much more quickly by working through the county.
And I just have a follow-up, unless you'd like to go next.
Yeah, if I.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so lots of thoughts. So again, the name of the game and the name of this committee is Community Justice Response Committee. I've said this for my year that I've sat here on council. I've said this and sitting here in this committee is that we truly have to have community input, and that involves both Monroe County, which also encompasses the city of Bloomington. As I look out in the audience, I've seen folks from city that are here, whether it's city administration, city council, or just general members of city. And I do not think, and I will continue to beat the old drum for as long as I can continue to have breath in this little body, we have got to make sure that we are having community input. If, again, our guiding principles talks about transparency, it almost feels like sometimes this committee can be gatekeeping those out as well. And so I think that this committee could be used in a way in which we can really truly sit down and have the discussion. We're already doing it. We've been doing it for a while. Let us continue to have input and continue to have community involvement that does involve the city. We already know BPD uses or books folks in the jail more than ever. So why not have folks that are already doing the job, the experts that are already here to be a part of this? I understand there's a no, but I still continue to push back and will continue to say yes. I think we need to do that. And I understand that although, again, there are lots of things that we can discuss in terms of, properties and whatever the case is, but I do think that is the job and the responsibility of this committee is to talk about things and not go backwards and decide on a facility and then come down and talk to this committee. And furthermore, I would like to say, and this is the last thing that I'll say before I mute myself, is the fact that although commissioners have a say in building as the financial body of the county council also has a responsibility in that. And we also have a say in funding this property. So we cannot do anything alone without community involvement. And I would caution us to the wind if we do not continue and we act in the manner of just us versus them. This is we, this is community, and this is how this committee should act.
In response, I'll just say that we have absolutely no intention of not accepting community input. We have got a considerable amount of input from the city as we went through the process there. We heard quite a bit about how they feel about jail should be built and various things like that. We absolutely, and when it comes to that time, would of course involve all of law enforcement. That is clearly something that has to happen. We we do not see ourselves as being quite at that point yet. So as we get into the actual design phases, then we will be reaching out to many, many more people in the community, to the people who offer services, along with all of law enforcement, and many people in the community who have been involved in concerns about the jail for a long time. No one's voice will be cut out, but things will happen in their own course of time. Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, thanks. Just to piggyback off of that, I think everybody's making some good points. I just want to reiterate that we all have lanes, right? We all have our responsibilities here. Council, commissioners, the criminal justice side, we all have our lanes, and we all have aspects of this that need to be addressed in terms of reform. And I don't think the criminal justice side would want us, for example, on the Board of Commissioners, to tell them how to manage their courtrooms. They have their rules, they have their precedent, they have that's up to them. And so I think we all have our lanes. I think we should all be providing input on everybody's parts in the process, but I don't think we could ever expect anyone to hand over their responsibility to the community, which is a very broad term. Community input is great, but who actually makes the decision? And so I think we just have to recognize that we have lanes, right? And that there are points where things are going to become much more community focused, and points where we have to move forward and work our magic based on our own responsibilities. I will say that the whole point of, for example, to say, well, don't leave the city out. Well, of course not. And this law enforcement survey that I believe has gone out, but I'm not sure it has. But that law enforcement survey is going to all law enforcement agencies that ever put any, have any contact at all with the jail. And that includes, of course, BPD, and they're going to have a louder voice because there are more officers from BPD than there are from Ellisville, for example. So they're automatically going to have a larger voice in giving us that input on that process. And then when we get to the point where we're trying to design the footprint of the entire area or the building and all of these other points, yes, we need input. We need to know, where all these things need to be and how much space we need. And like, for example, today I was like, oh my gosh, yes, witness access. That is so smart, So we all have things that we can help use to inform one another in our parts of the process. And that's the whole point of this committee, is to share that information and then to bring the community in as well at all of those junctures. But there are things where we have lanes. We cannot tell the judges how to manage a case. That is not our responsibility. And so I don't want to give people false hope that they could come in and offer that guidance and that it will automatically be accepted. The guidance will be welcomed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that something is going to change, because that's not our lane, right? So I think we have to be really careful about that. Be very inviting, take the input, learn everything we can, but we do have our lanes. And so, at this point, the justice side should be working on those processes and how they're going to change them and what they're going to look like. And we're working on the building side of things, and council's working on the funding side of things. And so we have a lot to work through. But I don't want to give somebody the false hope that they can come in and change the way that the judicial system operates at its core, because that's, I'm sure everybody on the justice side would love the input, but input is what it is, right? So I hope I've been clear on that. Thank you.
Yes, and I don't just like to add that people in our position understand that we will never make everyone happy. Too many people have too many different ideas of how things should be. So that's not going to happen. We're just going to make a decision as best as we can in the area where we're required to make that decision. We are not going to try to cut other people out of the areas where their input will become really very valuable and really necessary. And I would really like to move on. We have a great deal of public here.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
It might be helpful, and we've talked about this before, but when you're talking about like modern jails could not be located downtown, or that we need pods, if that's evidence-based, it would be nice to know. Like just as
Yes,
a,
that's some of what I would really like to get onto now.
okay, well, I'm just saying it would be good to
Yes.
educate.
Yes.
We had talked at earlier meetings about having those sorts of materials shared in advance. For example, I made sure I sent the presentation and the raw data last Friday so everybody could share it. And I think we would all love to see what kinds of solutions there are to different locations for jails. I would just ask that we have it in advance so that everybody can review it.
Okay, I'm extremely sorry that we could not get this to you in advance, and we certainly hope to get it to you. The commissioners and I, the other two commissioners and I have spent the last week in Arizona visiting jails there, visiting a crisis treatment center there, doing quite a bit of research into this. I got home at 1:30 last night, did not get to bed until 2:15, and I'm really sorry that we have not had a chance to get all this information to you in advance. But I think you can understand that that would have been somewhat impossible. And while we have not actually pulled all of our information together yet or anything, I did hope to give you some information about what we had found in Arizona as we were visiting Arizona this week. And it was very, very worthwhile. And actually, we very much hope that other members of this committee will take the opportunity to visit also, because it was extremely informative and we learned a great deal. And I think it would really be worth everyone's while to learn about this.
I would like to just say, I'm gonna say it, that it would be nice, like, yeah, I think we would like to have that opportunity if the opportunity is given to us. And again, going off of our guiding principle, we had no idea that this was happening.
Well,
And I appreciate you, like, I do appreciate you all going so you can report back. That's fine. But again, I also just want to respect my lane and make sure, we're doing what we need to do. But I think we also need to make sure that we are given an opportunity to this committee, because time and time again, we hear things that have happened after they have happened. And again, the job of the committee is to do these things. At least that's what I think. But moral of the story is it would be nice to know and have these opportunities if possible. So I'll mute.
Well, this trip was rather unexpected for us. It came up quite quickly and was arranged through people who we had met when we went to the mental health symposium. The period of time when we could go was very specific because of the jobs that the commissioners have, and we aren't necessarily able to just drop everything and go at any time. And each of you does have, I believe, your own travel budget. And if you judges do not, well, then it would probably be something that we should consider with the council. But Certainly, and if necessary, the commissioners can look at a way to make this happen, but we very highly recommend that others get to go ahead and visit these places also.
I don't think that Jennifer's comment was that we should all go. And I don't think it would be fiscally responsible for us to pay for trips to Arizona for everyone on the committee. It's just, I think, the idea behind this committee as an advisory committee to a decision-making body is a difficult position. I understand that you're asking us to provide information to you. And I think there are people, I'll speak for myself, I don't feel very empowered to provide that information in the setting and the structure of this committee. It's not feeling as though the information that the commissioners are getting is being shared in a transparent manner. And that, I think, is the frustration that I'm picking up on in the room. I mean, for instance, Peter and I were on a call where the Arizona example was discussed. I was only on the call because I found out about it from Peter and he let me in. And there wasn't much follow through. I thought I was going to be able to have some of these conversations with people in the state who were informing things. And then I wasn't invited to the call, and then I insert myself, and then they're talking about Arizona, and that's fantastic. And I have no time to go to Arizona. That's not really what it's about, but it's about a lack of transparent conversation around the activities and the path that we're trying to take. There is a huge decision to be made, and we get that it is your decision. It's dependent on good information and good input, as well as a collaborative process of discussing that input and a mutual understanding of your responsibilities. And I can't speak for all of county council, but Jen's point is well taken. County council needs to be on board with your decision. And it's frustrating to not feel as though our lane is appreciated, so to speak.
I think it's simply a matter of we haven't yet reached your lane.
I am sorry. Wow.
I'm sorry. We're at this time, the task ahead of us is to find a piece of property to build a jail on. And that part of the task is up to the commissioners. We are not trying to keep any secrets from you. We are trying to be transparent. I guess maybe it would have been better to have not brought up the fact that we had this really very remarkable experience until we had a chance
I will
to write it
respectfully
up.
disagree.
And I'm sorry, Catherine, would you please stop interrupting me?
I will be happy to speak next.
All right. As I think we are feeling a great deal of frustration ourselves because we have been meeting for quite some time and don't actually seem to have made much progress at all. We see the situation at the jail as being really very dire, and we're trying to move ahead with it as quickly as we possibly can. We are not trying to cut out anyone's ideas or opinions. There is an email address that comes to this committee that is working, and we welcome anyone's comments on that. We like to have public comment in these meetings. They are supposed to end at 6 o'clock, and frequently the meeting lasts so long that there's very little time for public comment, which we actually believe is important. So And all I can say is I'm truly sorry if anyone feels that they're being cut out. That is not our intention. Our intention is more to bring people in at the times when their particular input and skills are needed. And I'm just sorry that you happen to feel this way. As Commissioner Thomas said, ultimately, this is our responsibility. Ultimately, we are the people who will be sued if we don't take action on this. The courts will not be sued. I believe probably the sheriff will also be sued. Unfortunately, since he's only just taken office and is not actually responsible for the situation at the jail. But I think that it should be recognized that this is not a situation that we want to delay for as well. We do want to move ahead as quickly as we can.
So I would like to briefly respond, which is I would agree with Counselor Wiltz that I don't think anyone objects to the commissioners taking a trip last minute or not. I would have liked to have known about the trip so that if I had questions that you could have posed to the people there during the trip, we could have all gotten the benefit of those answers. I may or may not have, but I didn't have the chance. Neither did any of the other judges, neither did anyone on county council. As far as I know, anyone from the prosecutor's office or public defender's office or health department or sheriff's office. I think we all would just like to know what's happening, at least as it's happening, rather than finding out about it on the agenda after the fact. We all work a lot. I was grading all weekend. I was working on orders all weekend. We all work. We all have things that we need to do. I think that there is a disconnect here between saying that you want input and then getting mad when you get that input. And I think that the leaders of this committee need to make up their mind.
I'm sorry. I do not believe that anyone has got angry. I think that we have been trying to respond in a thoughtful, open way. As I said, the trip to Arizona was organized over Christmas vacation after the last CJRC meeting. There wasn't really much of an opportunity for us to ask for anyone's input. And I'm terribly sorry about that. And I'm sorry that we couldn't have included you more. It was a situation that didn't allow for that. And I think that at this point,
I think all we'd be asking for is an email. You said there's this email
Yes.
list. Like, it'd be great if you just emailed and said, hey, we're going to Maricopa County. That's it. That's all. I don't have time to go to Arizona either. I mean,
okay,
you know,
well,
that's it. Just
I'm
to give us a
sorry.
heads up. That's
we
all.
can do that.
Thank
And
you.
I don't know if we'll ever be going anywhere else in the future, but if we should, I think we can do that. As I say, it was a very last minute thing to come up and came together very quickly. And in actual fact, one of the places we visited only came together after we got there. And at any rate, it was a very worthwhile trip. Many of the things that were mentioned in the judge's survey were things that we witnessed when we were there. Many of the problems that have been brought up are problems that we saw how other people had dealt with there. I understand that maybe all of you are not interested in going. There would be great value in that and probably could be arranged because for those of you who might wish to, because we do see it as being valuable and important. And I apologize once again that the circumstances were such that we were not able to be as transparent as we would have wanted to be. April.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. I recognize that we're having really difficult conversations about difficult subjects. And that one of the points that I hear you making is that or at least Commissioner Thomas, is the feeling that we all have individual responsibilities. And I recognize that. I recognize that the commissioners ultimately are going to make a really difficult decision. You're going to have to decide if there's going to be a jail, if there's going to be remediation. I respect and understand that. I also respect that the county council has a very difficult decision and that they're going to have to assess that information that you've provided to them and trying to make the best decision possible that is comprehensive and well-informed. And so what I hear is, in order to make this very difficult decision that you each have responsibility for, there's the hope to be as well-informed and inclusive as possible. And lastly, just to acknowledge, we all have responsibility at the table, because we're going to talk about treatment, but at the end of the day, those of us that work in the system are going to have to assess those options and see if they're appropriate mechanisms for what we need. So we all have responsibilities, and we take that very seriously, because we're going to go to work tomorrow, as I've said before, and we know the names of the people in the jail. We've read their cases. We know they have families in the community. They are members of our community and human beings that are living in conditions in that jail. So we take our responsibility very seriously. And we're in no way trying to say, I understand you have yours. I think the hope is, though, if we keep coming to this committee and drawing lines and saying we're unwilling to work collaboratively, I think the fear is that we won't all make informed decisions. Because I think if we talk about some of the issues that we're struggling with in the justice system, I'm happy to hear your input on it, because maybe you have a different approach that I haven't seen. And maybe that's how we get real reform. So the real question is, how are we going to move forward? Because it is very difficult if we provide input and the response is that maybe we didn't understand the question, or that maybe we didn't see how it could be fixed. It would be really helpful to us if instead it was trying to understand where each of us are coming from. I think that might produce more productive conversations. And just one last thing. I recognize the county council and working through zoning and the public comment has been a lot of information, but I think it gives us an opportunity to reset as a community justice reform committee. And now I think that we have identified very concrete items that we can explore in a comprehensive and inclusive way. And that we can then give you information so that you can make your very difficult decision. And that's all that I think many of us are hoping to do for each other. And so that's why, what's one of the reasons I think to bring up inclusion of the city on this committee, specifically a city councilor. I only recommend that because it seemed one of the challenging issues that you're really struggling with is, where do you find a parcel of land that fits your needs? And it seems like the city council might have additional information about zoning and creative solutions that we may not all have that information. So I recognize that it's difficult, but I also want to acknowledge what I hear you saying, but what my hope is for the committee so that it can actually be better. And we don't keep having these meetings without feeling like there's progress.
I understand all of that. I would like to kind of review the history of everything a little bit here. This is a committee that was formed in response to the 2 studies that we had done. Initially, the committee was only the commissioners and the council, because we saw the initial response to those studies as being a need for a new jail that was significantly different from the jail we have right now. There was another component to the study that was extremely important, and that is the case processing that is done by the judicial system. The commissioners have nothing at all to do with that case processing. We would not dream of attempting to tell you how to handle your case processing. We do know that that is a problem within our system. And a lot of why we chose to include the judicial side was to try to work hand in hand and get that case processing portion of things moving along with the building of the jail, because these are things that are going to affect exactly how much space the jail needs. So really, we we are looking for input. We are happy to receive any kind of input. But basically, we're just trying to get this moving because we are very concerned about the situation in our jail. Sheriff Marte?
Make a correction. Angie just texted me and I was sent a survey question back in November 15th of last year. I don't recall responding to this, so I do have to apologize and say that I did say no one informed me. I'm thinking of transition team at the jail, but Angie did send me an actual email back then for the question that you proposed earlier for me. Does that make sense what I said?
No, I'm sorry, I
Okay,
don't
so
quite
I'm
understand.
changing
what
topic
you-
entirely on you. The first question to me was asked, did you get a survey as far as questions for law enforcement?
Which,
And I said I did not, but actually I did back in November 15th. Angie sent it to me, Angie Pretty. But in my mind, I'm thinking of something else entirely. So, but I have to apologize. I just want to make sure the record is clear.
I don't
did
think
receive-
there's any apology necessary. I think that was expecting a bit much of you.
Okay. All right.
I want to just say that I think everyone on this committee fully understands it's the commissioners who pick the location and decide the number of beds, that it's the council who decides the funding, and it's the judges who decide the people who go there. I also want to make sure that we talk about a group of people that we don't often talk about on this committee, and those are the people who are victims of violent crime and victims of other nonviolent crime. We have things that happen such as a 24-hour hold when there's a domestic violence call. I handle order of protection cases, and those are critical holds because if people are not held in the jail for that 24-hour period of time, it gives no time to the victim to go and get an order of protection, find safe housing, get important things out of the home, handle child-related issues. There are victims of rape and murder and other serious crimes who deserve to be safe. And community safety does require that some people be in jail. That's a voice that we don't talk about as much that I think we need to mention. So I just wanted to make sure I brought it up. Thank you.
If I can, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna reclaim some time
Please
here.
do.
Yep. So what has come up in this conversation is the fact that we all have a lane. We got a judicial lane, an executive lane, a legislative lane. We all got lanes, whether it's a bike lane, fee lane, we all got a lane. But that same thing is we all have a lane on the same road, and we all have a road, and it's the path, and the path is criminal justice reform. That is, so whether we're away over here or we're over here on whatever lane, we all still funnel down into the same dang on thing. And what that means is while we all know that we have positions and we all play our parts well, at least I think we do, we need to make sure that we are still being active community listeners, builders, and team building. Just because I'm on the county council and I understand that I have the funding responsibility of a project doesn't necessarily mean I just only have that tunnel vision and I don't want to hear the experts of public defenders or judges or heck, one of the biggest things that we haven't even brought about is we've not heard from inmates and their families. How the heck do we think we're going to proceed forward in any of this if we are not hearing from the people that will ultimately possibly go into a building that will set people up for generations to either succeed or fail? I
I'm
have a huge-
sorry.
and I'm going to reclaim my time for just a second more. And I just feel like we have to make sure that this is what we're doing. It is necessary, it is healthy, it is the progressive values that we in Monroe County continue to talk about. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's be about it and let's keep moving forward, or else this committee is in vain.
Yes. I'm agreeing that if we don't start moving forward, this committee is in vain. And I would like to point out that over a month ago, we brought to you a contract that was sent out in advance with Allison Howlett at IU's Behavioral Health Institute. And the contract that she brought forward was to survey all the people in the jail, their families, to survey them again. The people who are in the jail will be surveyed again sometime after they leave the jail. These surveys are intended to find out about their experience in the jail, in particular, not really the overall experience, because that what we really are anxious to learn about is what programming worked, what programming helped, what programming they believe would help them more and they would like to see in the future. And there was nothing hidden about this. This was brought to you all. I believe that you all were aware of it, at least at the time. So that is not something we're ignoring.
No, I think
As for victims, that's something that we also are not ignoring. It's simply not what we've got to yet. There are all of these different pieces that are going to have to come together in the end, and they're going to come together in a certain order to make them work. A whole lot of what's being discussed, we have learned, can be affected a great deal by the design of the jail. But there are also many components that possibly should not be a part of the jail. These are all things that we're going to have to be discussing that are going to ultimately be a part of this whole project. Right at the moment, our concern is to locate a jail. And we are happy to hear of any property that anyone knows of that they think would be suitable for this. I think that one of the things that we do want to keep in mind is that ultimately we do want a justice campus where things are co-located, as it seems there was a great deal of interest in co-locating. This has been a part of what we were looking at right from the very beginning and has continued to be. We realized partway through that we're going to have to bond to be able to do any of this. And we probably will not be able to initially bond for enough to be able to create the whole co-location at one time. We're going to have to wait to see how the annexation process works out before we will actually know what kind of resources we'll have available to back up a bond. And so that's something, co-location is something that's definitely intended. We absolutely intend, even in the first phase, to move the sheriff's department with the jail and to have some sort of courts located there that can be used in hopefully an efficient way. And yes.
yeah, I think
Kate.
that our surveying and data collecting has been going really well. I mean, I think that's a success, and gathering input in that manner is something that I think has been really useful. And I appreciate that that's been a priority. I do think that there are other ways to have input that is more of a facilitation of gathering information as opposed to sending a survey out and getting responses. It's a little bit more of a back and forth. And I think that's what some of these suggestions that I'm hearing might bring about, especially just going to reiterate, involving the city at this stage would be invaluable. It was pretty apparent to me at the city council meeting that it was a concern of city council members that they hadn't been involved, and that in part swayed their votes. So we could have a property already under wraps at this point, had we perhaps, and this is conjecture, I get it, had we involved city in the first place. That's how you bring people together. You involve them from the beginning. You provide them a stake in the outcome that is meaningful as the part of the process. And then your decision making is more informed, it's richer, and it's coming from the ground up. And I think that's where we're a little stuck.
The reason that decision was made is because we will be spending county money. This is county money that's going to be spent. I am not aware of any situation where the city has asked us to weigh in on how they spend their money. It does include the entire community, and we do need input from the city. But in the end, these things are the county's responsibilities entirely. And that was why it seemed kind of maybe not fully appropriate to include city members on this committee. We have no intention of cutting out their input. We're happy to receive input from them at any time in a variety of different ways. This may have been a bad decision, but it was not, it was a thought out decision, and I would have to say that this is what the ordinance calls for. I mean, the ordinance determines the composition of the committee.
Right, but that was changed by the commissioners, and the commissioners could change it again. And
I can discuss with the commissioners whether or not there's a desire to include the city in county decisions.
there's clearly not.
Yes.
We've asked and asked and asked, and it's been said, and I get that. And I wrote an email to you all and asked you and was told no. And I get that it's a losing argument. It's an important argument to keep making. And I think we're going to be paying the price for that decision. And it's very frustrating, because I think that's part of why we're not making progress. And I think we share that frustration, is that we're not making progress. And I think this is a big stumbling block.
Darcy.
As I sit and I listen, I think I share your concern in that we're missing an opportunity here. And that I do fear, and I think everybody fears, that we're going to end up in the same position 10 years from now. In terms of, or what the position that they ended in when they first designed the jail that we have now. And I think it's important that everybody at the table take a moment and self-reflect about if they really are listening to what is being said. When I issue a sentence, my sentence is my sentence, and I get to make the final call. But if I don't get buy-in from the people in which my sentence impacts, it may not reach my ultimate goal. I have a criminal docket. My main goal is to keep people out of my courtroom. I don't want to see them, and I tell them this, unless we're outside and you're, at the same restaurant that I'm at. And if I don't explain my sentence in a way that gets their buy-in, it could be pretty futile. And at times, I just have to make my ruling and be at peace with the fact that I think I have done everything I could do to get that buy-in. And that I ask everybody on this committee to do the same thing. Yeah, we all have our lanes. And you guys have done a great job in asking for feedback. And I want everybody to take a minute and say, okay, so I'm getting the feedback, but am I hearing it? Because the only thing I can say is that I would venture to guess that there is a majority of people at this table who do not feel that they're being heard. And I want to make sure that I'm not playing a role in that. And that's what I encourage everybody here to do. Is it's easy to say, well, I hear you, Ms. Crossley, and then turn around and go do something different. It's very PC. I see you, I hear you, but really take a minute, because if the majority of the people are saying one thing, then I just hope we're all taking a moment to really mean what we say by, I'm hearing you.
Well, I'd have to say that the commissioners are feeling that we're not being heard by the committee. We have been saying a great deal about why we're making the decisions we're making, about when we're making the decisions we're making, about how other people will be pulled in to make the decisions that they are to advise us about decisions that they're more expert about than we are. That is absolutely our intention. We've made it clear all along. We are simply stuck over the fact that many people feel that somehow magically the jail is going to happen in the city. And that would be fine if we could have found a way to do that. As I've explained pretty much at every single meeting, this is not the way of the future. And we have been studying a number of other jails. And most of you have gone to them with, or you've gone to at least some jails with us. The jail in Ohio that people visited had the same transportation problems that we would be looking at. We're looking at those in advance. They actually built their jail and then realized, oh, we're going to have transportation problems. So they haven't used it yet while they're trying to figure those problems out. We certainly want to work on all of these things as the time comes up. Our initial problem is a location, and that's what we're trying to work on. And basically, I feel that people are not hearing what we're saying about how this process can work, about what's needed, and keep on reiterating the same ideas that we feel are not viable. And I think we could move forward a lot more quickly if we would realize that things will take place in their time. And at this moment, what we need to do is find a location. And we're happy to hear about any locations that anyone can think of that might be appropriate.
Have the commissioners discussed with city council members or city zoning the possibility of using any of the ground on the former hospital site?
The commissioners are aware of the fact that the city has already made designs for that area, that they've made plans
As am I.
for
but
that
was-
area. And so, no, we did not really think it was appropriate to go to them and say, forget all your plans. We want you to do what we want.
There is there is reason to maybe give a little bit more consideration to the Thompson property that you talked about earlier. I realize that there have been other ideas and it doesn't seem perhaps as feasible under the Catalan agreement. But it is actually a jail is a permitted use for that property right now. It is in the city. Those are some significant hurdles that have been brought up. It was purchased to be a site for a jail. I'm not saying it's the best site. I'm saying that maybe we've dismissed it a little too early and it could be reconsidered. There are also other possibilities, I think, that could be discussed in the city, and having the city representation in it would help those conversations.
I'm not sure that that's quite accurate. Although the county does own that property, it's still subject to city zoning. And we have been told that jails are only a conditional use anywhere in the city, which means a rather lengthy process to use any city property. So I think that's going to be difficult. we're looking at many, many difficulties with that property. The one place that it has very limited access. There's a very small amount of access off of Rogers. And that actually is an easement for utilities throughout that small little area. There is possible access from Adams Street, but the jail actually has to have rather large trucks come frequently to make deliveries. There are frequent sirens going on, and that's right by the youth shelter. And we have tried to avoid a situation that would be that disruptive to the youth shelter. It's not just a blind decision to not use that property. That was actually the first thing that it made sense to look at. And we did look at it.
So, oh, I'm so sorry.
Say, I see Councilmember Iverson has had his hand up for quite a while. So
Councilmember Iverson, please.
Thank you. I have been listening, and I wanted to echo what I've been hearing about collaboration. I think that's really important. I'm also very interested in what you learned in Arizona. And so my question is, as I look at the clock, would it be possible to get a written report of your findings from the trip that you made to Arizona?
Yes, that was intended all along. As I explained, it was just a little bit, we were a little bit short on time with that. I think that we will have a written report by the next meeting. And I hope that you all will be able to look at it and consider the ideas that we ran into. And even if there's not any interest on the part of, I think in particular, law enforcement in visiting and checking these out, I think that, well, one thing that we are hoping to do is arrange a Zoom meeting with one of the entities that we visited with, actually the Crisis Recovery Center that's in Tucson, which is quite innovative and very interesting, and we believe would be a very good model for us to consider. We will be writing up all of this and letting you know as much as we can about it. And now, unfortunately, we are pretty much at the end of our meeting. We did not leave any time for public comment.
I think we should I will motion that we make sure that we have public comment. Folks have come out. We've taken a lot of discussion time. I appreciate that, but I will say I make a motion to make sure that we allow at least 20 minutes of public comment.
Okay.
All right. Let's see, there's a chair right here and a microphone. Would anyone from the public like to make a comment? We would ask that you please limit your comments to 5 minutes. And if you have made comments in previous meetings, we're interested in anything new you have to say, but we would prefer not to hear the same things that have been said at every meeting. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Thank you for extending the meeting for public comment. And I do apologize, I arrived late. I thought it started at 5. So I just have a few comments. I appreciate all the mentions of involving the city. We in city government, I think I can speak for the majority, if not everybody. We're very concerned about community justice reform. And we would like to help in any way we can with this county run process. I was quite concerned about the analogy by Commissioner Thomas about us all being in separate lanes. How can we ever come together and work collaboratively if we all stay in our separate lanes? I do not understand that. And it seems like it's only the commissioners who have the roadmap for these lanes. Could you please share with the public what the roadmap is, when you envision getting input from whom. As for the location, please keep in mind that any location should be served by public transit, and currently public transit is only allowed within city limits. As you know, the city council has expressed an interest to expand transit at least out to Ivy Tech, and we would certainly be interested in expanding transit to a future jail location, but that is currently under the city council's control. So involving us in this decision would be very important in that respect. And really greater communication with the city could avoid problems in the future, because we do want to work with you. We do have expertise. And I know Commissioner Jones just laughed when she said that we
No.
want to work with you.
Well, I'm
We do.
sorry.
We do. The decision about the Fullerton Pike rezone, and I can only speak for myself, but it was not sort of a spiteful decision. You didn't put us on the committee, therefore we're going to vote against that location. There were other reasons for that. But just reflecting on what has occurred in the last 7 months, I think some problems could have been avoided if the city had been more involved. So I am hopeful that we can be part of the conversation, and not only through emailing the committee, but through active engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I know that recently was developed with Mount Smith, and then heard the Bloomington Commerce Council.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. I always ask people at our meetings to say their name and I forgot, so I apologize.
Good evening. Kaisa Goodman here in my capacity as the City of Bloomington's new Public Engagement Director. It seems that there are two main questions before the CJRC. One, how to prevent people from going to jail, improve outcomes, reduce recidivism, and increase quality of life for anyone who is incarcerated. And then two, what capital improvements are most feasible and beneficial to improve conditions for those in custody. Our jail is a stain on our community, immoral and illegal. And even if we decided today on the best path forward for an improved facility, it would take several years to complete. Which begs the question, what about the people currently in the jail and those who will be in the jail for the next few years? Why are we talking about increased services and support systems in future tense instead of present? Community justice reform is greatly a public health issue, and we should be prioritizing the immediate implementation of greater services and prevention and diversion efforts, including significant immediate local investments in greater mental health and substance use services, as well as job placement supports. As my City Council colleagues mentioned on December 21st, we believe truly bringing the city to the table on community justice reform will improve both the process and the outcomes. While the justice system and public health are the direct responsibility of the county, the city is also logistically and practically involved. For example, Bloomington Police Department officers are the top user group of the jail. The city has considerable experience with large-scale capital projects, and the majority of county residents are also residents of the city. It's also critical that we receive input and expert testimony on the feasibility and beneficiality of the many options discussed from experts on public health, mental health, social services, architecture and engineering, and more. Fundamentally, our justice system is a reflection of our collective values and priorities, and justice reform will be more effective with greater collaboration and communication. While our city and county governments collaborate extensively and effectively in many ways every day, we sometimes see issues differently, and that's okay. Nevertheless, I implore this committee to prioritize effective and compassionate community justice reform over all else. It's not too late to revamp the dialogue and who is involved. We have a moral imperative to raise the level of justice in our community, and we need to be working with the people, the organizations, and the governmental entities who are committed to this work. This is a matter of life and death, and we need to treat it as such, working together towards real reform. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to working with you all in this new capacity.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello. My name is Sydney. I'm a member of Care Not Cages. And I would just like to briefly comment about all the lanes that we're talking about. That's been brought up a few times, but I just think there are about 5 lanes on this street and lane 1 gets to the end and has this predetermined plan in mind, and then they ask the input of lane 5, you're going to end up with this jail that's in Ohio that doesn't have transportation availability because we didn't ask lane 5 about the transportation access after it was too late. And I would also like to point out that like expert opinions are very important to have and they should be at the table, but not to undermine the opinions of your community and the people who live in the city and in the county and the people who are inside of the jail and don't get to go home at night. They probably know best what's going on in there. And I think that, opinions should be heard. And I think there's kind of a lot of feeling that people are talking to a wall, and they say that they hear the opinion, they say that it's being absorbed, but then they turn around and do quite the opposite. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, I'd like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm here in my personal capacity. My name is Haley Powell, but I'm also a student at the Indiana University Maurer School of Law. And there, in my capacity as a student, I'm also the Director of Administration for the Incarcerated Individuals Legal Assistance Project. So we get mail from all around the state from incarcerated people asking for our help on a variety of legal issues. But something that's often missing from conversations about criminal justice is that these are real human beings that you're putting in cages. And I would just like to say that your comments in particular really spoke to me, because so much of this meeting was going around in circles about, we don't feel like this is transparent, and then going back and forth and saying, well, I did my best, but your best isn't good enough if you're not serving the people in your community and not thinking seriously about how you're tearing families apart unintentionally. You can pave the road to hell with good intentions, but these are human beings and their families have seen the jail we have now deteriorate to a level that is unacceptable. And we also need to think seriously in the future about what we're going to do when a crisis stage like this is again approached. Because if we continue to poorly design these jails because we're not considering the long-term aspects on these human beings, you're going to reach these moments over and over again where we're scrambling to find a good plot of land for another jail. And if we don't think about this right now, this council will be in that position again in another decade. And what are we going to do in the meantime between when this jail is currently deteriorating and when we finally settle on a new plot of land and build a new jail? There are people in there who don't have windows, who hardly go outside. And this has been a long time coming. No one looked at that jail even a couple of years ago and said, this is a good long-term solution. So I just wanted to bring in the human compassion aspect of this jail and remind you all that you are doing this work, not as just in your official capacity, but there are people you walking along the street when you go home tonight and they know someone who has been in that jail. Someone you love could be in that jail. Jails don't disappear social problems, they disappear people. And we all need to think about where this is heading in the human aspect. This isn't just an agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Miss C. James. I don't really have anything like very, I don't know how to say it, but I work at New Leaf New Life, and we were talking about location, and like the most important thing for me is like I've slept in that jail. I've spent Christmas in there. I've spent my birthday in there. I have spent day after day after day in that jail. So as far as expertise information about what goes on in there, I think I got that down pat. And I had a client the other day that like really took me back. It was a county jail. He was released in the middle of the night and walked to the county he was from. And he had the worst case of frostbite I have ever seen, to the point that we had to do a medical intervention and take him to the hospital before I could even do any type of treatment with him. So like it's super, like location for me is like super important, because safety and being released. I know I've been released. I'm sorry, but if you have court late in the day, you're released sometimes, 10 o'clock or later at night. And it's super like scary. It may be, the difference between making it and not making it is being released. What do you do? It's 10 o'clock at night. You go to do the same thing you've always done. You go to what you know. I have a lot of respect for Judge Fawcett and the chances that she gave me. And I think that like other people have said, these are our community members. They're our friends. They are people that have a chance. I went to treatment and now I'm clean almost 4 years. I have a driver's license, I'm a productive member of society. I live in Wheelhouse and Clear Creek, just chilling, and I think, we can make differences for these folks, and they are folks. They're not like numbers. They're not 369 beds. My friends are in there. Our community members, people who can change their life like I have. So but safety for me is super important. And I just want to share the story with you about what might happen if we have something that's too far out in the county. And because court happens late in the day, people are released at night. And a lot of times we don't have community or family members or whatever that we can reach out to. And people get frostbite to the point that they have to be hospitalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.